Start by introducing myself. My name is Dan Ribera, and I'm excited to teach this class. The last class that I taught, I think it was a couple of years ago, was on apologetics, and I'll explain in a minute why these are the two classes that I have volunteered or been asked to teach. You'll hear more about that. Let me start by praying, and then we'll talk. Heavenly Father, thanks so much for just the opportunity to dig into your word, to think about life. Lord, I pray that your word will become real to us, that our hearts will be touched, that our minds will be touched, that our actions will be changed. Lord, thank you for this opportunity where we can talk about such an important subject. Especially thank you for these folks, and I just pray that you would be with them, bless them, and let them know that you love and care for them. In Jesus' name I pray, amen. This is my first year technically in retirement. I was a teacher for many decades, and for the last about 20 years, I taught at the high school level, a little bit at the university level, and one of the classes that I loved teaching, my two favorites were apologetics and ethics. I taught mostly at the high school level. So for 19 years, I was in the classroom, and I thought briefly this morning about calculating how many students went through my ethics classes, but there's a lot. It was a required class at Bellevue Christian School. I mostly taught 10th graders. That was interesting to have ethical conversations with 10th graders, but it was good, and I loved it. I love the opportunity to just engage in conversation and in thinking about those deep questions of life. I've also taught a little bit at SPU as an adjunct, and currently at Northwest University, and the classes that I taught at both of those universities is a class entitled The Moral Classroom. And so one of the things that I was tasked to do was to help teachers think about how ethics comes into the classroom. And in both of those assignments, I'm teaching teachers who are not necessarily going into the Christian school, but I'm also trying to prepare teachers who are going into public education. And so that's been a fun task to help teachers think about, at all levels, primarily K through 12, at all levels, how do we provide an ethical, a moral education? And so I'm actually started on Monday teaching a class at Northwest University entitled The Moral Classroom. And so it's a little bit different than what we're going to do here together, because you're not pre-service teachers. Some of you are in-service teachers, right? Okay. How many of you are teachers? Oh, good. Hey, let's do this real quick. So how many of you are in a profession that thinks about ethics? I'll refine that a little bit in a minute. Okay. How many of you, and you can raise your hand more than once, how many of you are in a profession that has a written code of conduct? Okay. How many of you are in professions where there are ethics committees who wrestle with, should we do this or this? Okay, so I think there's maybe one or two people who didn't raise their hands at all. I'd love to know what you do. I have a second illustration. I wanted to point out just how pervasive ethics is in our world. Like we're all thinking about ethics frequently. Maybe not all the time. I don't want to overstate things. So we're frequently thinking about ethical issues. Here's another illustration. How much of our great literature, movies, books, stories, involves an ethical issue? Okay, think of one. Think of one of your favorites that wrestles with an ethical issue. Now, as you're thinking about that, I want you to know that in preparation for teaching this class, I have watched The Good Place. Okay, that was actually a test. Do you not know what that is? Okay, very good. All right, that was a strike. Some of you know, and then for some of you, again, this is a risky one. For some of you, I have watched season 5, episode 4 of Friends, the one where Phoebe hates PBS. You don't know what that is either. Okay, we'll get to that. Good. Those two examples tell me a lot about my audience today. Good.
What season and episode though? Season 5, episode.
Season 5, episode 4.
4. Thank
Yeah,
you.
the one where Phoebe hates. And I'll just for those of you just to tweak your interest a little bit more, it's the one where Joey debates with Phoebe about whether a person can do a selfless good deed. So even friends actually often engage in ethical issues. So,
episodes like Bible chapters and verses. 5, 4, 32.
Yeah. So literature. Which ones did you think of? Your favorites that deal with an ethical issue?
Les Miserables.
Diana, you chose one of my favorites. Yes.
Yes.
Good,
Okay.
good. Another one.
Giver.
Giver. Good.
Avengers Endgame?
Excellent.
I was thinking about both. We're listening to Narnia with kids again,
Mm-hmm.
and then Atlas Shrugged. So they're parts of the equation.
Yep. And in that same genre, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter. I've got a bunch here. Star Wars, right? To Kill a Mockingbird. Moby Dick. Yeah. Sophie's Choice. Okay. Children's books. The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. You love that one? Yes. We love Kate DiCamillo in our house. So the world is just filled with ethical questions, ethical literature. Our movies, our shows all surround ethical issues. Real quick, something that we have to attend to. I keep using words like moral and ethical. What's the difference between the words moral and ethical? Talk to a neighbor. That's what I would do in the 10th grade class. Talk to a neighbor, and see if you can come up with a distinction between the words moral and ethical. Go ahead.
This is something I've used about forever. Like, I remember having to give some speech on ethics in high school and like not being able to understand the distinction. I think my default is to think like maybe how like principles or like first principles, and then like ethics is how you apply those principles. But I don't know, to me, at least as a high schooler, it felt like an arbitrary distinction, and I haven't investigated it much in the sense So,
So they're related. So what you just said, ethics is practical behavior, more or less, and moral is right?
Yeah, or reference, right? To the reference, how to behave,
I don't know if
how you fall,
I'm not convinced that I should care about having a distinction too. So I just haven't cared. But that's part of that's like a question I'm thinking. I think it's actually that today.
You did,
I was, but I'm always,
but you never stopped learning, but never stopped thinking like that. Yeah, but teachers are especially.
So as a good teacher, I was listening to conversations. Before I get your answers, could we do something real quick? Could we go around each table and just say your names out loud? I'm not going to promise that I'm going to remember all the names, but it's good for us to know each other, and I'll try. We'll start with Diana. You see that?
Yes, that was good. Hi, I'm Diana, rhymes with Montana.
Let's keep going around.
Dora. Sarah.
John.
Matt.
Lou,
David.
Krista,
Jared.
Aaron, Maria,
Sam.
Poe.
Are you guys in the back part of the class?
Yes. Brad.
Kirsten,
And the baby?
Jackie, Jennifer,
Emily.
Benton. Luke.
Carla,
Melody.
And our tech guy.
Scott.
And I'm Dan. Did we get everybody? Okay, there'll be a test. What's the difference? Bo.
Well, we kind of touched on, it seems like ethics is more like the current cultural expression that comes from morals. Like in the workplace, a couple of us had codes of ethics that we have to follow, but we don't have a code of morals that our workplace.
No, we don't. It's interesting, and good, Dan.
We agreed that morals is the deeper, what's right and wrong,
Okay,
versus ethics following morals and being a system of behavior.
okay.
Full disclosure, we did use Google.
Dictionary, no, the dictionary.
Oh, the dictionary
Yes.
on the internet.
Yes.
Good, Dora. You were about to,
Oh, I was gonna say ethics seem more relative than morals.
okay. All right. Anyone else? I find no fault with any of those answers. I too Googled that question. Now, okay, I'll try not to go off on a tangent. I've got 3 sources here by way of the internet. The Oxford English Dictionary defines ethics as rules of conduct in a particular culture or group recognized by an external source. It was interesting. A number of the sources said ethics were like outside, where morals were more internal. And I found that interesting. I don't agree with that. But we'll see. So, for example, there are medical codes of ethics who said that? Bo, did you say that a business has a code of ethics? Yes. Medical code of ethics that medical professionals follow. If you're a teacher in the state of Washington, you agree to a code of ethics that you live by, or you perform by. Morals, according to the Oxford English Dictionary, principles or habits relating to right and wrong conduct. Again, very similar, but based on an individual's own compass of right and wrong. And again, I'm not sure that I agree with that that distinction. Psychology Today said, to put it simply, ethics represents a moral code. So now we're using the word in the definition, that guides a person's choices and behaviors throughout their life. The idea of a moral code extends beyond the individual and includes what is determined to be right and wrong for a community. Again, Psychology Today is suggesting that ethics is more of a community, a communal decision about what's right and wrong. And then the master class. I've never taken one of those classes, but I hold them in high esteem. The term moral describes an individual's guiding principles. So again, individual. The term ethical outlines a standard of right and wrong in a society or professional ethical context. Okay, so 3 fairly reputable sources suggest that ethics represents some kind of external or communal decision about right and wrong, where morals looks more at the individual person's sense of right and wrong. Pretty much when we use these terms, we use them interchangeably. Really often we do use them interchangeably. I'm going to rephrase them in just a moment, and you'll get a sense of why we lean toward one word and not the other. But if I said, "Is that an ethical choice?" I could just as easily say, "Was that a moral choice?" Now there's a difference in tone, but we do tend to use those 2 words interchangeably. In the high school classroom, here's what I would tell my students, that morals deals with the questions of right and wrong. Is that good or is that bad? Plain and simple. Ethics, because I was teaching a class called ethics, ethics was the thinking and the wrestling with and the supporting and defending your moral choices. So ethics tended to be more of the academic discipline, where morals was what that academic discipline studied. So that's the way I've always used the term, but the interwebs, doesn't agree with me, so it's fine. It doesn't really matter, because as I said, in our conversations, we do tend to interchange those 2 words. But you can accept those 3 sources if that's, and that fits in with what some of you said. Listen to this language. I'm going to change the form of the word a little bit. I'm not enough of an English teacher to know how I'm changing this, but if I introduce someone as an ethicist, good morning. I am your guest ethicist today. That has a certain tone to it. If I introduce myself or someone as a moralist, good morning. I am your guest moralist. What would you expect of me if I said to you, good morning, I am a moralist?
You lecture us.
I'm going to lecture you. What else?
Tell you doing what we're doing wrong.
I'm going to tell you what you're doing wrong. So a moralist sounds like a person who is going to judge, right? I'm a
Sounds
moralist.
like a Pharisee.
A Pharisee. Pharisee is what you could. That's a good example. A Pharisee is a moralist. So, even though we disagree a little bit about the definitions, what I just illustrated tends to agree with what I found when I Googled that question. Here's why. We're okay putting ethical decisions into the hands of society or into the hands of a committee to draw up an ethical contract. But if I say to you, I know how you should live, then I'm a moralist, because that's I'm imposing my personal morality on you. And so, again, I'm I'm dealing here with just the way we use these two terms. I'm going to repeat again, often we use the two terms interchangeably, but there is a little bit of a different tone to it. And we'll study ethics. If I had a class and I said, this class is called Ethics for Everyone. If I called this class Morals for Everyone, you'd come in and I'd say, okay, let me give you the answers now. I would like to tell you how to, and you know, when I often refer to my high school teaching experience, but when I would have students in class, how would I have fared if I had said, all right, the class is designed for me to tell you how you should live. All right, folks, let's list the issues, and I will now tell you what you should do. Anyway, we had a better conversation wrestling with ethics, and we're going to get into this now. This class is not all about what you should do, it's about why you should do what you should do. So let me move over to that. I want to share a story, or two. I started every semester in high school ethics by sharing. I always came up with different stories. I knew what stories worked with 10th graders. I wasn't sure what stories were going to work with you all. So I thought I'd give you two personal stories. I love working with my hands. I love tools. Someone asked me recently, hey, who did you get to remodel your kitchen? And I was like, mostly I was the general contractor. I did it myself. Some years ago, a lot of years ago, we were doing a remodel, and we needed a couple of concrete steps, and I thought I could do that, and I could. I like tools. I have a good set of tools. I don't have every tool, so in this project, I had to rent a tool. I needed something called a hammer drill. I needed to put some rebar into existing concrete. Anybody know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
Okay, good. I had to put rebars because you didn't want the new steps to be walking and shifting. And so I went and I rented a hammer drill. It came with a bit. And here's something that you should know about me. When I rent things and the sales rep says, would you like to get the insurance on that? I say no. Oh, I'm getting a nod from John, which means that's a good decision. So I was like, no, I didn't. Wait, I have to tell you this. Some of you know that I'm originally from New York. I try not to talk like a New Yorker. I didn't say, no, what do you, why would I want that? I spoke like a Pacific Northwesterner, and I said, no, thank you. So I declined, and you have to sign. I declined the. Anyway, I'm drilling. I'm drilling several holes into the existing concrete, and there's a handle on the side. It's a pretty powerful drill, and there's a grip over here with the trigger. And at one point, the wire is getting in my way, and I did something really foolish, and I know now that it was foolish. I let go of the side grip. Hammer drills have a lot of torque, and when you let go of the side grip, the bit bound in the concrete, and instead of the bit spinning, the drill started spinning, and my arm was going around like this. So self-preservation, I let go of the drill. Now, there are no hands on the drill. And it spun around a little bit. Since I let go, the trigger is released and the drill stopped. And I was like, oh boy, that was dumb. So, I pulled the drill out, and guess what? The bit is bent. Fortunately, that was the last hole I needed to drill, and the job was done, but the bit was bent. Not a huge deal, but now I'm thinking to myself, oh, I got to go back to Home Depot where I rented this, and the young guy who was like, "You're not taking the insurance?" is going to look at me, and I'm going to be shamed. So I thought to myself, I could just pack this thing up. I know how this system works. You just go in and you say, I'm dropping this off, and they take the number and they take the tools into the back. And I don't even have to tell them that I bent their bit. I could save face, I could save money, I can get away with this. What should I do? Now, don't answer yet. What should I do? I have to take a little sidetrack for just a moment. Remember, this is an ethics class, not a morals class. And so the class could be over pretty quickly if I just tell you the right answer, right? I could be a moralist, and I could say, class, if you find yourself in that situation, here's what you should do. So I love to poll my students, and I have to just tell you this fascinating experience that I had. For years, I told a story in my ethics class about honesty in taking a test, and the story related to one student knowing that another student had cheated, and the teacher asking the student, "Did that student cheat?" And that was the moral dilemma. Of course, when I tell these stories in class, they're much more elaborate. And so then I would poll the class, and I would say, would you tell on your friend? Now, for many years, I told the story, and I asked the class, and then I would poll the students, and I would actually have students raise their hand. How many of you would tell? How many of you wouldn't tell? I was always impressed and a little bit dismayed that my students were so willing to lie. Like, without compulsion, they'd be like, "No, I'm lying." And I was like, Christian school. Like, I mean, I understand it's not that simple, but they were just willing to lie. And then, my friends, the pandemic happened. And you're wondering, what does that have to do with whether or not they would lie? Here's what it has to do. We went online. I started teaching my ethics classes online. And I'm sitting at my desk at home. I've got my screen. I've got my students up there. And I'm thinking, I'm converting all of my material into an online experience. And now I'm thinking, okay, I can tell the story, I can do that. Can I poll these students? Oh yeah, I can poll them. I can provide kind of an internet space where they can vote. And so I asked them, how many of you would tell on your friends? Suddenly, the stats shifted in the other direction. Where students in a public classroom said, I'll protect my friend, I will lie to protect them. Online, most of my students said, I would tell the truth. Okay, let me sort that out. When they were online, nobody knew how they were voting. Then they were willing to say, in front of my students, I'm not going to be the guy who snitches on my friend. But if we're in an online forum and nobody knows how I vote, suddenly I become honest. And I am totally willing to tell on my friend who cheated. Once I saw that, I started intentionally in the years following the pandemic, I actually started testing that theory that students who were publicly voting would vote one direction and students who were privately voting would vote in the other direction. And my experiences proved that that was the case. Here's why I gave you that sidetrack, that story. We're not so interested in being a class on morals. We're here as looking at ethics, which addresses then not what we should do, but why we should do it. And you see, I've just introduced a dynamic. One of the reasons why we do what we do is because how we appear to others. And if I have to do something publicly, that may change my decision of my actions versus if I can do something in private. I don't know, I found it to be a really fascinating illustration, and it was eye-opening because I didn't realize that all those years I wasn't getting, I don't know, was I getting a true sense of my students' decisions or morals by having them vote publicly? Maybe not. So, ready to go back to the original story? I'm at Home Depot. Do I tell the kid? You see, he's gone from being a sales rep to being a kid. Do I tell the kid behind the counter that I bent his, and who knows what other damage I did to the tool? Do I tell him that, or do I not? Do you want to share? What should I do? I realize I'm putting you all on the spot, and you're going to make are you going to make the decision to make yourselves look moral?
Can I answer online?
Yes.
I think I would tell.
You would tell?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did you consider replacing the bed without telling?
That was my first, that's what I thought. That was my first thought. Go buy a bit.
Right.
Thank you. That's great. No, I wasn't smart enough to do that. But you know what? The kid said to me, just go out and buy a bit, put it in here. The kid was smarter than me. Can you think of here's one of the ways we'll operate here. I don't always know how you're going to answer questions, and in each of our classes we'll have a story or stories like this. Can you think why someone would not tell? What would be the dynamics of somebody who would say, I'm just going to drop it off and I'm going to leave? Yes.
I was just thinking, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who would say, oh, Home Depot's fine, big box retailer, they're fine. They're good, they got insurance to cover it, they don't need the money, they're stealing from us anyways or whatever.
Yeah. They're making a big enough profit.
Versus, what if you had borrowed it from a little mom and pop, one person stand?
Yeah. It's not the kid behind the counter. He's not.
That's not how I would have done it.
Okay, no. Anyone else? Why would someone say, I'm not telling?
High anxiety?
Anxiety? Yes. This is really stressful. I'm embarrassed. Someone else?
The cost of it,
Yeah. I'm over budget on this project already. I can't afford this. Yeah.
Well, and you said it earlier, to save face, you didn't want to look foolish
Right.
in the eyes of the kid.
that offer.
Yeah.
I think you could rationalize it like they're gonna charge me probably inflated rate for it, and it was already used, and probably wasn't in the best condition, maybe a new bit wouldn't have been like that, so you find ways to justify why
Yeah.
not to tell.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Our next step is going to be this. We'll often ask, what should I do? And then in the second stage, we'll ask the question, why should I do that? Now, next week, I'm going to lay out a framework of how we do that. I'm not going to give you that answer today, but I would like to have some of your answers. And let's do a little chart. I'm going to say on this side, tell, don't tell. We could make it a little bit more intense by saying lie, truth. We'll do it this way for now. We'll try to make the choices. We'll make the choices neutral. Okay.
Could, if you don't mind, we all seem to give answers for why we would not tell. We did not give any answers for why we would tell.
Dana, why would you tell? Why would a person tell? I'm not going to put you on the spot.
No, I'm happy to, whatever. I would tell because I think that it would be more ethical to tell. That I would want to live with myself, and as a Christian woman, I want the Lord to be pleased with how I behave. So that's why I would tell.
Now, yes. It's
For
more,
me,
it's
that's
more
all that
ethical.
goes into it.
Now, I want to steer us a little bit here. This whole question is, what is moral or what is ethical? So, if you say it's more ethical, that becomes a little circular. What I would like you to think about is, why is this choice ethical versus why is this choice ethical? So this answer is okay, but we've got to go a level deeper.
So you're suggesting that not telling could be perceived as ethical in some way?
Some people would say that that's ethical, yes. Yeah, when somebody makes a choice, nobody goes into Home Depot and says, I'm a bad person. I'm bad. Okay, that was bad. Nobody ever said that about themselves. Everyone looks at their own behavior and says, maybe they'll say this, for me, this is the right decision. And if someone can say that, they've let themselves, they're off the hook. So yes, somebody could
That's
put
interesting.
in this
Okay.
column, this is a good decision. John,
Can I give an example from a book that I thought was really interesting?
please.
So the book's called Weird, which is like, it's about Western culture, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's like weird, it's like Western, educated, industrialized, rich, and what else? Somebody else got it? But contrasting with cultures that are more like kin-oriented or family or tribal-oriented cultures.
Yes.
And so the question is, okay, you've got, it's October of 2020 and you've got the COVID-19 vaccine, and you know, you're a nurse and you were given 500 samples of the product, or the vaccine, and you had people lining up for it. And in the ethical answer in Western cultures would be, you have a queue, and whatever the policy was for how that queue is formed, you follow that policy, right? You would ask anybody in this room and they would probably say, the correct thing to do is to vaccinate the next person in line. And in kin-oriented cultures, the correct thing to do would be to vaccinate your family first, and then your friends, and then you kind of have these concentric circles that are based on relationship, and it would be unethical not to vaccinate your own brother if your brother, even though he wasn't in line in the way that the rules were set up. So that was really helpful for me to be like, oh, that's the ethical thing to do, and it really helped shift my, I realized how, like, Christian Western worldview, myopic my view of ethics were in that particular situation. Because otherwise I'd be like, can't believe that's how somebody would think, you know? I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying, like, they would consider it ethical. That was
Yes.
the part that was, I just assumed that person would consider it unethical, but they'd do it anyway.
Yes.
No, they consider what I'm doing unethical. Which is unethical of them. Just be clear about that.
Yeah. It's fascinating to consider that I don't know if it's everybody, but everybody thinks they're making the good decision.
Well, I think another thing we have to throw in there is it fair?
Which side do you want me to put that on?
It can be either. You know?
Okay. Yes, is it fair? Mm-hmm.
Are you saying
Yes, yes.
someone that goes in with the intent to rob at Home Depot is actually saying, I'm making the right decision? It depends on who they are.
And maybe because they're stealing for their family who doesn't have food, so they're making the right choice to save their kids.
Jean Valjean.
That's right.
I broke a window to get some bread to feed my family.
I'll
Not
say
even
that's
himself.
1800s and he was righteous. So what about currently?
I don't know. Could someone say, I am the 21st century's Jean Valjean, and you are Javert. You are a moralist.
Yeah.
Moraliste. Say with a French accent. It's more profound. Well, okay.
Or even Robin Hood, he stole to help the poor, so it's that same kind of thinking.
Could someone? I am tempted to say that when someone robs a convenience store, they feel justified in doing that. Now, maybe there's other dynamics involved, in addictions and so on. And so maybe it's not maybe they're not making rational choices. But I could see someone saying, yes, I am justified in doing this. Bo.
Yeah, I was just thinking, it seems like the ethics are gonna flow from a person's morals, and then for me, it raises the question of, okay, what is the source of your morality?
Yeah.
And presumably for us in the church, it's God's revealed word. And so for this particular thing, I think of, so like the commandment on thou shalt not steal, that could have, are you depriving Home Depot of some portion of the value of the tool? Also bearing false witness. If you just drop it off and represent that everything's fine and walk it off, or, even go to the greatest commandment, what does loving your neighbor look like in that situation? Is it surreptitiously leaving a damaged tool? Maybe not.
Bo, which side would you put the words loving my neighbor?
I think I put it on the tell.
But what if you dropped it off with a brand new bid that was better than the one that
That's a good point.
And
I have rented tools, by the way, that were dull and out of order. And I've gone back and I've said, this is dull and out of order, which is why I thought, other people have done that to me. John.
Well, so I want to get back to the, everybody who robs a convenience store thinks it's the right thing to do.
Okay.
I think I disagree with that.
Okay.
And so it's like the 120 thing, right? For what can be known about God is plain to them because God has shown it to them. For his invisible attributes, namely his eternal power and divine nature, have been clearly perceived ever since the creation of the world. And the things that have been made, so they're without excuse. That there's an element of we believe in the biblical narrative that God is the one who created us, and there's an imprint and an impression of him that we can rationalize it, we can do mental gymnastics, but fundamentally we know that that's not right. I don't think anybody who's robbing a convenience store, if you gave them Veritas serum, would say.
if they were in their right mind, if they may have demons in them, driving them crazy?
I've got a different example that feels similar to that. It's the movie John Q. You can see this movie, Denzel Washington, where he has a kid his kid maybe 8 years old is playing baseball and he has a massive heart failure and staying in the hospital, and the hospital won't do it because of his insurance, and so they're like, your son's gonna die unless you pay us $100,000. And so he takes the hospital hostage, and basically puts a gun to the hospital's head, give my son a heart transplant. It feels like, what's the ethical decision there? It's does that cross the line? The convenience store is more cut and dry, and I don't think, this is an extreme case, but what are the ethics behind that situation? I feel like I heard Dana say, instead of ethical, almost like having a clean conscience.
Okay.
I feel like that could go under the tell category.
Yes. Sure.
What came first to my mind is that I don't remember much, but when we study physics on high school, and you do all the experience and the equations, and they say, well, depends on the reference to the right answer. I don't know if you guys remember this. So I think we as Christians, we have a reference that it's taught along the Bible, and that Jesus that goes, I think, with love my neighbor, what both said. So if you have a reference that you really believe and know that changed your life, and that's the truth, that's where you go after.
Okay. So it depends on a person's point of reference.
And belief that the truth, that's what Jesus thought, that complies everything that's there.
Can you all think of a point of reference that would allow me not to tell?
Well, we have the Bible as a,
Okay.
so I don't know, that's what comes to my mind. Is it easy sometimes to make the decision? No.
If the store set the expectation, I think they set a clear expectation whether you had to sign a paper that said probably that you'd return it the way it was brought, that it was given to you.
Yes.
So then it would be lying to not return it that way. But if it said, if there wasn't a clear expectation set, I think someone could argue like, I just need to return it, and there's not a state that I need to return it in. So, I think that's a nuance.
Okay. Scott?
I was, back to the love your neighbor point, I was gonna say, with that is not passing the buck, so to sow righteousness. So if you were gonna rent the tool again, your expectation would be that you get a good bid. But one also shouldn't expect that Home Depot is gonna inspect it rightfully. So if you know something is wrong, to love your neighbor, you would wanna inform the Home
Okay.
Depot.
Does that allow me to put over here Home Depot's inconsistency? By the way, I'm not trying to defend this position, I'm showing you that.
That's what crossed everybody's mind.
Yes, Bo.
Yeah, I was gonna, back to your question on what would be a frame of reference that would support don't tell. Maybe if one comes from a culture where family is the primary value, you know, by not telling, I can save money that could be used by my family.
Okay. I'm gonna favor my family.
I mean, if you twisted the story slightly and you bought the tool from Costco and they have a return policy that's crazy, right? I don't mean, like the return policy, it's very generous, let me say that. Maybe it fits in the return policy, hey, that bit was not very strong, or whatever, right? And so could you just return the tool to Costco? They build it into the price of everything that, you know, X% of things are gonna be returned.
Right.
Maybe they build it into the price of your rental, that X% of their tools are gonna be destroyed, and that's just part of what you're paying for as a renter.
Yes.
You're paying for the wear and tear of that tool.
And it makes you wonder about the ethics of their insurance policy.
That's why I thought it was greatly declined it.
Did you get insurance the next time?
No. In fact, my second story has to do with renting a car.
With a drill bit?
No, I rented a car and somebody ran into the back and sped off.
Oh, no.
I was the victim. And I thought I could go into the queue and return this car and not let them know that there's a dent on the back. So it's the same story, different scenario. One of the things that I would do in a classroom is I would collect a ton of these answers. And I have to let you know, 10th graders are much more willing to support the side. 10th graders in Christian school. But what we do next is we start to...
Like Home Depot doesn't rent to under 18 now.
That's why. That's the reason why. We start to sort out all the different answers that we get, and we begin to see patterns. And what I would like to do is, if you're willing, I would like to give you an assignment to read a chapter from C.S. Lewis. And reading this chapter will prep us for a conversation next week when we start to sort out the why. Why do we make the decisions that we make? And I think we're going to find that there are some patterns in how we answer that question. Again, our focus is not going to be on what we should do, although it's a lot of fun to have these conversations. But our focus is going to be on why do we do what we do. And so, if I could. can I ask you all to take one of these? This chapter comes from C.S. Lewis's book, Mere Christianity, which is a collection of some of his radio addresses. And in this chapter, he outlines what he calls the 3 parts of morality. Let me just see if I have anything else I want to add before we... just in closing, I'm thinking that we're going to divide this course into 2 parts. And the first part is going to address this topic that I've introduced today. Why do we do what we do? And we're going to analyze that, and we're going to show various variations on this theme. Again, I'm not going to give away the framework until next week. And then in the second part of the class, we're going to spend time looking at some of the prescriptions in the Bible. And that's the one that I'm a little bit more concerned about, because I'm not sure of my competence in explaining some of these things. One last story. My son Brandon is not here this morning. He was going to be here, but years ago when he was in college, he worked for a little bagel restaurant called Noah's Bagel, and Noah's Bagel was a Jewish-owned business, and they had a way of filling a prescription from the Levitical law, which the prescription was, do not boil a calf in its mother's milk. And the prescription was, use these knives to cut meat, and use these knives to cut cheese. And never the twain shall meet, because if you combine them, you're breaking that law. Now that's fascinating and interesting and curious, and we can talk about how they get from point A to point B. But in the second part of our course, we'll look at some of those kinds of things, and maybe some that are more interesting and relevant for us today. Unless you're concerned about boiling a kid in his mother's milk. But why is that even in there? Do you know what I mean? Okay. Let me end with this. Israel. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with a calf a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000s of rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. To do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God. I wonder what that has to say about our visit to Home Depot. All right, my friends, Lord bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
Welcome.
very much.
Hope to see you next week.